God, I condemn you back to hell!
Hello, welcome back to Ycft. It has been 10 years since The Conjuring came out. 10 years since the Conjuring universe started. That's mad. That is absolute madness.
I know.
Like, our very first video was Malignant, a James Wan film.
Oh yeah, it was.
That's fair. James Wan was very well known before this, obviously from Saw, Dead Silence, but this film, I feel like it does have its haters, but God, this was a good film.
It was. I think, however you feel about it, you can't deny The Conjuring was a bit of a game changer.
Yeah.
In horror.
On a $20 million budget, which I think was the biggest budget he'd worked with at that point.
Probably.
It made something like 319.5 million. It did very well, and it told studios that they could make studio horrors again.
Yeah.
That there was profit to be made in it.
Yeah.
And the franchise is still going today with a new film being released this year. We've got a fourth Conjuring movie on the way. It's kind of crazy.
It's crazy. And at the time of filming this, this is actually weirdly the anniversary that I went to see this in the cinema in 2013. And I saw this 6 times. In its initial run, I went to see this 6 times. I was obsessed with this movie. I've technically now seen it 7 because we saw it.
Yeah, we saw it in like an old Victorian swimming pool that had been turned out to be a cinema. I did not see it in its theatrical run, and I really regret that. But I'm glad I got to see it in the cinema, surrounded by a group, like people like they were like dressed up and everything. It was really cool.
It was great.
Really, really cool.
This film I think means a lot to both of us, kind of individually.
Yeah.
Like I really did fall in love with this movie, and yeah, now we're going to talk about it.
Finally, so it is based off the cases of famed ghost hunters,
Paranormal investigators,
Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yes.
I think for a long time they worked on trying to get something made out of their case. Obviously, Ed had long passed away at this point when Lorraine was still alive, and they opted to start with this one.
Yeah.
So synopsis, I suppose, of both the real life events and the movie is this family of 7, the mum, dad, and 5 daughters. 5 daughters. The Perrin family.
Yeah.
What are the names of the parents again?
Carolyn and Roger.
So Carolyn, this is played by Lily Taylor. And Ron Livingston is the dad in it. Lily Taylor is the standout in this film. She is in everything she does.
Lily Taylor is one of my favourite actresses of all time. I adore Lily Taylor.
They move into this luxurious farmhouse. Obviously in the film, in real life, it was a farmhouse, but not quite the James Wan house.
Yes.
Anyone watches the films kind of knows, big luxurious house.
Yeah.
Over time, strange things start happening. Like the house is clearly haunted. The dad goes away on long trips because he's a lorry driver, a truck driver. So he's usually away for sometimes a week, 2 weeks. I think at one point within the initial run of hauntings, he was gone for a month. And that is when the spirits within the house will start to take their toll on the rest of the family. Eventually, the Warrens do get involved and an exorcism takes place. Kind of roughly the similarities between the real events and the film kind of end there. Because the Warrens in this are played incredibly by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. The mixture of like those two, then Ron Livingston. I've got his name. It is Livingston, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And Lily Taylor.
Lily Taylor, not Lily Rose.
The mixture of those 4 brings such gravitas to a lot of the performances, especially like, for example, the exorcism like towards the end. But even the kids are really good in this.
They are really, really good. Yeah. I think we said it briefly at the beginning. We'll obviously elaborate on this. But ultimately, when you kind of like nail it down, The Conjuring doesn't do anything drastically different in terms of it being, it's a haunted house movie, partially an exorcism, an exorcism possession movie. It doesn't really do anything majorly different to other haunted house movies, similar films in the genre. But I think the cast, like the core 4, they just add like an extra kind of, they bring in another kind of level of caliber to the movie, and all around, I think their performances are absolutely solid.
James Wan film usually always has interesting camera movements, and he's really good at making the house feel like a character. Like when we are first introduced to the house, it's this amazing water that follows one of the daughters, and the camera goes underneath the sofa being carried by 2 movers and follows the characters through the house. So any good haunted house, you need to know the space.
Yeah.
And this one, it takes you through the whole layout of the house at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
Or at least the downstairs. It's really well done. And just interesting. I remember we have one character who's running towards the stairs. So imagine you got the front door here, stairs here. So they're coming from this way. So imagine I'm the camera. Goes upside down. So you got the character going up the stairs at this point. And then back down again. It's that's such a weird, something that throw you off of it. This is odd. He just does interesting things with the camera, which just elevates this film.
Yeah, definitely. I think he'd already he toed in the haunted house genre a few years prior when he did Insidious. But one thing he does very well, I think, is the family element. Obviously, a family is at the centre of Insidious and a family is at the centre of The Conjuring. And Lily Taylor, the kids, and Ron, they work together really well. But I like how James Wan takes his time in allowing us to kind of get to know the family a little bit too. We see them move in and we see that little bit of chaos, when they're bringing in the boxes and they're getting the furniture ready and that time with the family I think is really precious, and it's important that we get to know them all as characters too. And the sisters have their own individual personalities as well. We see the dynamics between Carolyn and Roger, and they're very close, they're very intimate as a couple, and I really like that. And then running parallel to that, albeit separately, in the first half of the movie anyway, is the Warrens. And we see them together as a couple, and we see their family unit. And it's not really until the halfway mark where the two kind of
it's one
join.
thing. For the first half of the film, two different stories going on. So the film actually opens with a completely different case.
That's true, yeah.
Where we're introduced to Annabelle.
Yeah.
Who has since become a very famous doll. Another real case. I think we should say we are believers in the paranormal.
Yeah,
We'll get into the paranormal and the Warrens in a little bit. But the film opens with the case of the famous Annabelle doll, which in real life was it looked like a Cabbage Patch doll.
She's a Raggedy Ann doll.
Raggedy Ann doll.
She doesn't look like what she looks like in the movie.
Creepy ass. So we meet the Warrens on a very famous case, even if you don't realise it's famous, on a completely different case that is all about possession as well. We see them doing talks to universities, which we know they did in real life.
Yeah, they did.
But we also see a second case, which is one where it's been mistaken. It's it's actually just the pipes that's making the noises. The Perrin family is actually the third case they deal with within the span of this film. But what that tells the audience is that they are experienced in the field. They are known as the people to go to. So when the two stories do converge, we as the audience know that these guys know what they're doing and they care. And they can tell the difference between something real and something that's a hoax.
Yes.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I think that we see them do two separate talks.
Yeah.
So we show that they've been involved in exorcisms, that sometimes they can go wrong. But I'd say almost the most important thing, their university trips establish the rules that have continued throughout the entire Conjuring universe: infestation, oppression, and possession.
Which brings us to the 3 stages of demonic activity: infestation, oppression, and possession.
Infestation. You're in the house. Ghoulies are around us. The whispers. Those little things out the corner of your eye. The odd shadow. Oppression. Things start getting a bit more wild. Things start getting moved. Maybe even get a little bit violent.
Maybe.
Breaking down the target, which leads to possession.
Yeah.
To get an exorcism, you need church approval.
Yes. So
it shows that there is a progress. There is actually red tape to getting an exorcism done, because it's classed as a really dangerous thing to do. And it's we need proof. So there's reason for them to be there in the house with a film crew, with a local policeman, because they've got to prove to the Vatican that they need an exorcism. And it all comes together so well.
It does. Interesting to note as well that in real life, Ed Warren was the only known non-ordained demonologist recognised by the Catholic Church. So, he never took holy vows, he wasn't a priest or anything like that, but he was recognised by the Vatican, by the Catholic Church, as allowed to perform exorcisms. I think I've got that right. Or he was acknowledged as a professional demonologist.
Yeah. And Lorraine is quite famously a clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant, yeah.
We should probably talk about the Warrens, since they are the centre point of this entire franchise. They're not in every film. I think there's been 3 Conjuring films centred around them, and they do appear in Annabelle Comes Home, so it takes place in their house. In the early days of us dating, we both talked about a book about the Warrens called The Demonologist.
Yes.
So they are very, very famous paranormal investigators. But the versions we see in the movie are very much fantasized. I always see them as the version of Ed and Lorraine Warren that James Wan wanted to believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their marriage, like, it's perfect. They're very sweet. The musical motif that follows them, like
it's lovely.
like the Warrens' theme,
Yeah.
is beautiful. You got these incredibly good-looking actors playing them.
Look, okay, it has to be said, if you Google Ed and Lorraine Warren, I'm telling you right now, Patrick Wilson does not look like Ed Warren.
Yeah. The real
Just
Lorraine
saying.
is in this movie, though, isn't she?
She
She's
has
in
a
the
little
crowd
cameo.
at one of their talks.
She has a little cameo. So yeah, she was a consultant for the movie. I believe that the Perrin family were as well. But yeah, Ed and Lorraine, it's I don't know where to start with them.
Because even as reading this, a lot of the things I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like,
it is
cool. I want to be,
cool.
but then some things get so outlandish that I'm like, I physically can't
The thing is,
believe it.
we want to believe, guys. We want to believe in Ed and Lorraine.
Like a lot of things about, well, not look. There's so many videos out there about the Warrens and
Yeah, we're not going to dissect
their
them.
relationships, but how dodgy they could be. But there's definitely some stuff that has potentially been proved to have been fake.
Yes.
But at the same time, to be recognised by the church, there has to be, in my mind, I'd like to think at least some of it was real.
It could be a case.
I think maybe when it start moving towards being a bit of a business, then you've got to do things to drum things up.
Well, they did earn money from this. You know, you got to remember that this wasn't something that they were doing out of the kindness of their hearts. Like, this was a business operation for them. They were earning money from these investigations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, David was saying there's tons of videos out there that go into, you know, like the ins and outs of them. But famously, they were involved with the Amityville haunting, which is probably one of the most famous, you know, haunted house stories out there. And Ed and Lorraine, throughout their lives, were adamant that Amityville was real. Lorraine was convinced that the family was possessed and that the DeFeo family were haunting the house. Amityville has long since proven to be a hoax. I mean, you know, DeFeo, the one who killed his family in the house, has even admitted, like, it was a hoax. And his lawyer was trying to drum up publicity, like trying to go down the route that the house was haunted and that he was maybe possessed. And the Lutzes that moved in, they've talked about it as well. So it's quite famously proven to be a bit of a hoax, and yet you've got Ed and Lorraine who stand by that the house was actually haunted. And so
It's even like Enfield. They came have had massive involvement in. They were there for like a day.
They were there for about a day.
There's a good chance that a lot, or maybe even all of that, was a hoax.
So with the Perrin family, with this particular story, obviously in the movie we have the two separate storylines, and it's Carolyn Perrin that approaches the Warrens at one of their lectures and asks them to come to the house to investigate, because at this point the activity is ramping up. The entity is getting violent with her family. She reaches out to them for help. From what I can gather in real life, the parents did not reach out to the Warrens. The Warrens came knocking on the parents' door and kind of invited themselves into the situation.
Yeah. I think they visited like once or twice.
Yeah.
So I think the second time was when they said an exorcism needed done. That's when like the dad had come back from a month-long trip, but then suddenly like there's a whole camera crew there and he's like, get out of my house.
Yes, it didn't end very well. So the Warrens were insistent that a seance take place, and Roger Perrin was steadfastly against that. He thought it was going to be dangerous, but the Warrens went full steam ahead and they did it anyway. And Carolyn Perrin, whether you believe this or not,
because they believed that she was possessed.
Yes.
But she got hurt during the possession, during the exorcism.
I think Andrea, the eldest daughter, she wrote a book on this called House of Darkness, House of Light. And Andrea said that she doesn't believe her mother was ever possessed. She said, my mother was attacked, but she was never possessed. But she was the focal point for the hauntings, which is obviously something that the film runs with. But the seance ended badly, and ultimately the relationship ended with Roger kicking the Warrens out of their house.
Punched Ed in the face.
Punched Ed in the face. And that was very much the end of that.
Whether you want to believe it or not, to the parents, the hauntings were real. In fact, one of the kids said, even when they moved in, like on day one, they saw like a man stood in their kitchen, but at the time kind of just didn't think anything of it. Lots and lots of different ghosts in that house. There have been countless investigations on that house at this point. But they actually I think the family kind of agrees that the Warrens made things worse.
Yes.
That when they arrived, something else came with them.
Yeah.
Or they invited something else, maybe
Yes.
with what they were doing. So they didn't really help. So this is a fictional version of the story. So the parents have kind of got on board. I think they've even said, look, it's a movie.
It's a fictionalized version. I think it's also important to note that the film is based off the Warrens' case files. It's not necessarily based off the parents' account of what happened.
They do talk on the special features of it. It's like, obviously they would have been paid for it. And I think at that point, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, something happened. At least we can get something out of it. But they did. The Warner Bros. And James Wan did get sued by this dude. What's his name? Gerald Brittle. He had a contract with the Warrens, like exclusive access to their stories and to any adaptations from things within the book. So he claimed that like what was put on screen obviously would have came from this book. And all I know is that Warner Bros. Settled that in like 2017. So I imagine he must have got paid out then. But I found that quite interesting.
I would also just like to quickly mention as well.
Like that's what they actually look like.
Yes. Very much not like Vera Farmiga or Patrick Wilson, right? But hey ho.
Yeah.
They're fabulous actors, so whatever. I would also just like to say that in the movie, famously, the darkest entity that's haunting the house and haunting the parents.
That's also that Vera Farmiga did read this.
Yeah.
So my research relied heavily on the demonologist. It scared the daylight out of me profoundly. As part of her research for the role. Sorry, I've just never said that, realised that.
Anyway, the darkest entity that was haunting the house was Bathsheba Sherman.
Who was the woman in the chair here.
Yes.
Played by Joseph Bashara.
Yes.
He was the composer. He was also the composer on Insidious and played the lipstick-faced demon.
Yes.
And he also played the demon in the first Annabelle, which I think we mentioned in our last video.
Yeah.
I still feel like this was like an hour later from filming that, and I still don't know what that demon's called.
We can't remember. We know it begins with an M. But long-time collaborator with Wan. But yeah, the main entity that's haunting the house is Bathsheba. Bathsheba Sherman was a real-life person. And the way how she has been connected to the Perrons and this whole saga is because when Ed and Lorraine went to the Perrons in real life, it was Lorraine who suggested the name Bathsheba Sherman as the main entity. And I think that was largely because the mother, Carolyn, she had said that she'd felt some kind of like pinprick in her leg. And Lorraine recalled a story that she had heard in like historical records of Bathsheba allegedly killing a baby or an infant by stabbing them in the neck with a knitting needle or some kind of crochet needle. And so she made the connection. Now, I just want to bring this up because the Perrons, from what I can gather, have never believed that Bathsheba was the demonic entity. The movie obviously goes on this, suggests this thing that Bathsheba was a witch and that she sacrificed her own child to Satan, and then when she was discovered, she hangs herself by that tree out in the dock.
Oh, that shot.
It's a great shot, but the real Bathsheba, she actually died of old age of a stroke. The story of her with the kid and the knitting needle, there's no historical records for it. No one can find anything about that, so it probably is just hearsay. The Perrons also say that the entity that was haunting them and was attacking their mother clearly had a broken neck.
Bent neck lady.
Bathsheba Sherman died of a stroke in her bed. So there is another historical figure, Mrs. Arnold, who died in the 1700s. I think she committed suicide in the barn, so the broken neck would make sense. And I think the Perrons, all of them are in agreement that actually that woman is more likely the entity. But anyway, Bathsheba is always connected to The Conjuring, mainly because of Lorraine. Lorraine suggested that name, and now here we are.
It takes the bare bones of the story.
It does, yeah. It runs with...
Fictionalises
it does its own thing, very much so. But it does it well.
By not following it directly, it gives them so much more freedom to make an interesting film.
Yeah,
and making it about a witch is just... It just works. It works better.
It does.
In my mind. But I'm glad at least the parents got on board for it.
I think
so. I think they could clearly see... This isn't their detriment. They could see a payday coming for it. And it's like, well, yeah, why not? It's already happened to you.
Why not? That's the thing. No harm done.
That's kind of the history of how this film came about, I suppose.
Yes, and the Warrens, in a nutshell.
The Warrens, they're very interesting characters.
They are.
We could do a whole video just on them, which one day We might, especially if they keep making these films. Like Annabelle in itself is also a very, very interesting
It is.
character, which obviously has reoccurred throughout the Conjuring universe. And it established, like, again, more real things about the Warrens. The fact that they have a museum, like, in their home. I don't know if it's still attached. It was in their home, but I think now it's like attached to what was their home.
It, yeah.
Essentially, a museum of all the demonic things that they've taken. Essentially, it's safer to keep them under their roof and have the room blessed by a priest than to destroy them, destroy the vessel, and have the demonic forces attach themselves to something else. That is a real place. You can visit it. You can see the Annabelle doll in a case, and it is my dream to go there.
Yeah.
But we have to wait a long time to see something that took advantage of that room full of haunted trinkets.
Yes.
Where do we even start with the actual film?
I know. Oh my god. Do you want to talk about some standout scenes?
Yes. So we talk about like the reveal of Bathsheba herself.
Let's go for it.
The build up for it, because we got knockings, we got pulling the ankles. You know when you sleep and your foot's outside the duvet and you think something's going to grab it? This film will give you that fear of that.
That scene. Okay, yes. All right. One of my all-time favourite sequences in the whole film. You've got two of the daughters who share a room together, and Nancy is sort of like one of the middle-aged daughters, and she sleeps with her feet out of the bed.
Like a psychopath.
Yeah, gets yanked down the bed. The whole sequence that follows, oh my god. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen this film, this will always be scary to me. And it's partly
well, interestingly, for a film with pretty much no blood in it, I think there's like one little bit of blood. This film got a higher rating in the UK purely based on terror.
On terror.
Not based on what you're actually seeing. It got a higher age rate because it was scary. I think that's because it's classed as a PG-13 horror in America. Over here, it got a 15. I think that's important.
Yeah, it is totally. I mean, this sequence, especially that we're talking about, you don't even see anything.
No, you've got one of the characters who's can see something in the corner of the room.
Yeah,
in shadow.
She's fixated on something but lurking behind the door, something that we can't see. But it's the way that Wan does it, because again, yes, he's delivering on the scares, but he's also doing it in a way like he's twisting what would... He's doing something very different, but also delivering something very, samey than what we've seen in horror movies before. Nancy is not in a room on her own. First of all, she's sharing it with her sister, so she's not alone. The door is also wide open, so if she wanted to, she could easily just run out. But she is so fixated on something that she can see. And the actress that plays her, Joey King, who I think is wonderful in this moment alone, like, she is fantastic. She is so scared she can't even move, and her eyes are filled with tears because she is so scared. And then even when it's Christine, is it? She plays Christine, and Nancy is this like the elder one who goes up to check and like tries to comfort her and is like, no, don't worry, there's nothing here. But she is adamant that there is something behind the door.
It's standing
right behind you.
Oh my god. It's standing right behind you.
We can't see it.
But
Nancy can't see it.
Literally, the scare of this is something closes the door and you're just in darkness and you're screaming. And it's the perfect build-up for a follow-up scene on another night when we get the reveal of Bathsheba on top of the wardrobe.
On top of that fucking
we like
wardrobe.
the build, like the game, the silly game they play like hide and clap, where one person is blindfolded. It's basically like hide and seek. The rest of them go hide, but they've got free claps, and they use those claps to try and hear where they are. And you have the mum doing it, playing it with the youngest daughter, but something other than her is playing the game with her, and it's really, everything's pulling us to that wardrobe.
But it's daytime.
That is it. Yeah, this is well before. I think Midsommar definitely cemented like daytime can be creepy, but this was still quite an unusual thing.
It was.
I know you did it. You did it in Insidious as well, making the daytime scary.
A lot of the scares in this movie happen during the day, and also when the house is crowded. This is what I mean on like one delivering like same old scares, but in a slightly kind of different context. Yeah. You know, these aren't characters that are wandering around this house on their own. This is a busy house. Like, you know, the 5 daughters, and even when the husband goes off in his lorry to work, the house is always full. But yet there is that constant sense of terror. And like that That brilliant moment where Bathsheba is on top of the wardrobe and then she just like fucking like It starts with Lily Taylor investigating the house when she can hear noises and then the pictures come off the walls. All her daughters are upstairs, and yet you feel like she's alone in that house. Yeah. And by the time she goes to the basement, because she thinks there's like a literal intruder in the house, oh my God.
Oh, when she gets like knocked down the stairs.
Oh my God.
When she's got the match and you see her.
Hey, wanna play hide and clap?
The reveal of Bathsheba.
Oh.
It could so easily have been a jump scare. And James Wan, he's kind of known as like the king of jump scares in a lot of ways, but there's so many moments in this. Like, it's a dolly in on Bathsheba's face. You are forced to look in its face before it jumps off. And I'm like, he does a similar thing in The Conjuring too, where that's a mixture of like a slow reveal and a jump scare. It's just subverting expectations. Like, a jump scare would have been so much easier, but a dolly in was just an incredible one.
It's horrible. The makeup on Bathsheba is fantastic as well. She basically just looks like an old hag, and it's so uncomfortable. But that scene begins probably like 10 minutes prior, again with Lily Taylor investigating strange noises, and it crescendos to Bathsheba jumping on top of the eldest daughter. It's done so well. I really love, and again, I don't know if this is accurate for what really happened with the parents, but I like how in the movie the spirits, because there's multiple spirits in the house. Bathsheba is the most dangerous one, but there are other spirits in the house as well.
She possesses the mother to kill the child.
That's her whole shtick, and we learn that there's been incidents throughout history of children dying and parents killing themselves, but how the ghosts play with the family, and like they use familiar things to trigger the hauntings, because like the hide and clap thing, one of the little boy spirits is what plays the game with Lily Taylor. There's a ball that Lily Taylor throws to her husband when they find out there's a basement in the house, and then that ball is thrown at Lily when she's locked in the basement. Lily Taylor plays like a random tune on the piano, and that tune is played to her again when she's locked into the basement. So it's like
not all the spirits are evil.
No, they're trying to kind of explain what happened in their own sort of limited way. Yeah. It's not until the Warrens and Lorraine arrives on the scene that Lorraine's able to piece together what actually is going on.
Like in real, when the Warrens arrive, activity does start to ramp up. That's because they are on purpose. They see the Warrens as a threat.
Yeah,
and now on purpose they want to drum up the activity because they need to prove to the church that they need an exorcism.
Yeah, and I just also want to say I fucking adore this whole thing in the movie. And I love it in other films too, where you've got the investigative element. But, Lorraine and Ed, in the movie anyway, they're not just popping in every now and then, like checking in with the activity. They're actually staying in the house. And it's not just them, but they bring along Drew, who's like their camera assistant. Yeah. They also bring along like a local policeman to, get like official, accreditation and like.
Are they actually staying in the house, or are they just?
I think they stay in the house. Yeah. Some nights they do anyway. Yeah. Because there's scenes like where it's 3 a.m. and they're still like, they're drinking coffee. So I love that. It kind of brings sort of like a cozy element to it in a way, but again, it's a crowded house. But I love when there's like an active investigation going on, and they've set all the cameras up and they've got the UV light and they're all drinking coffee because it's like 3 a.m. in the morning and they're getting tired, but they're going to keep going.
3 a.m. in the morning.
Yes. Poltergeist I have a few issues with, but that's an element of that movie I enjoy as well, when the investigators kind of move in and help the family.
Can you think how much of Poltergeist was based off the Warrens' investigations?
Maybe a bit. I mean, Juan we know is a fan. He's a fanboy of Poltergeist. But I do love that whole element.
Gushing over James Wan and his transitions. As I've already said, the Wanna, which I now know from Freddie Prinze Jr.'s, that was pretty scary because his co-host is a friend of James Wan. Didn't work on this one, but he knows from James Wan how they did the Wanna. And says it's not a true Wanna because the exterior of the house is a real house, but the interior is a set. Mm-hmm. So the cut is when they go under the couch that's going onto a green door and onto the set. But there's other moments when they leave the house again, which must have been the same thing. And I'm like, wonderfully stitched together.
Oh, totally.
I've watched this film so many times, and I never clocked. But there's, my favourite shot.
Oh, I do.
When Lorraine is, while they're there, during the day when there's no activity going on, they decide to help the family, because it's a family of 7. And even that's why do you sleeves? Well, all our money's tied in space, and who's going to take in a family of 7 indefinitely?
Point taken.
So Ed, helps fix up one of the
Chevys.
Lorraine's helping with the laundry.
Yeah.
Dark clouds come in, the wind picks up. A sheet comes off the line and drapes over nothing. It's just a silhouette there. The wind then takes that. I really hope I can find this clip to explain this better.
Yeah.
Takes that sheet up to the top window, and when it pulls away, Bathsheba's in the window and she walks off. And that leads us into the next scene where she attacks.
Possession.
Where she attacks
Lily Taylor.
And I'm like, oh, that is...
It's great.
You could have... Thing is, you could have just had a look up to the window and noticed that she's there. But no, it's like, you forced our eyes to go from oh, creepy thing, up there. Oh my God, something's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's just I love really well planned out transitions.
It is really well planned out. It's unique. It is. And I have to say, some of my favourite scenes in this movie, or favourite sequences, they're not even necessarily
I just love a lot of scenes of just the
scary.
characters talking.
I was literally just going to say, one of my favourite moments is when the 4 of them, Ed, Lorraine, Carolyn and Roger, they're sitting down at the coffee table, and Lorraine is explaining to them, I've seen the dark entity that's haunting your house. I saw it outside. We get that brilliant moment where she sees Bathsheba hanging from the branch, and we just see the feet behind Patrick Wilson. Yeah. I fucking love that moment. But that scene at the coffee table, it's just 4 actors talking to each other. But I love Vera Farmiga. Yeah, I love Vera Farmiga's delivery. She's, talking to them about, what she's seen, what she's felt, and how she kind of says, even if you leave, it's going to follow you, because it's latched itself to your family. And I always get goosebumps in that moment, because it's like, God, this family is fucked.
A haunting is like stepping in gum, you take it with you.
Yeah,
it's why do you leave the house? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Another one, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son.
It's your son.
It's the family that's kind of...
Yeah.
But one of my favourite moments is it's when Patrick and Ron are having a talk by the car. And he's very frank. He's like, because, he's, thank you for coming and helping out. And Patrick goes, Ed, is like, not gonna lie, I didn't want to. It's just, 2 really good actors like that. And he explains, so it kind of answers the question of, why don't they just do the exorcism themselves? And he's like, well, I'm not supposed to do them. So every time Lorraine deals with a case like this, it takes a little something. And it shows the case we saw earlier in the film of an exorcism took a big something. We don't even really get a payoff of what that's about until the next film. And he's like, so it kind of shows that he obviously cares for his wife, and doesn't want her to get hurt. And he's like, I just really like that moment, because it makes him feel very, very human. And there's a warmth to the Warrens in this that might not have existed in real life.
No, exactly.
On-screen Warrens.
A peak Warrens.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, because I don't think in real life Lorraine Warren was helping Carolyn Perrin do her laundry, But in the movie she is, and that's lovely, and that's all fine. One of my favourite scary moments in the film as well is when Lorraine falls through the wardrobe and she ends up in the basement.
I can't remember if you mentioned, but on the day of recording this, isn't this Vera Farmiga's birthday?
It is. Yes, it's August 6th when we're recording this, so it's my anniversary of seeing it in the cinema. And yeah, Vera Farmiga's birthday. An eventful day all round.
Yeah, so when she falls,
when
ends up in the basement.
She ends up in the basement, and she's got April's little toy with the mirror in it, and she's looking around, she's trying to see if she can see anything, and she has a vision, or she sees the spirit of a mother who killed her boy, and it's the boy Rory that April has befriended since moving into the house. And I love how this moment where the mother is rocking, and she's devastated, she's clutching the dead body of her boy who she's been forced to kill, and she just kind of slowly looks around, and we don't dwell on it, but you can see the sunken eyes, and the sort of what do you call it? Like the dark kind of like vortex in the mouth and like ghostly, spooky looking. And then Lorraine turns around and there's nothing there, and then she just kind of moves the box, and then the mother is just there, like looming up into Vera Farmiga, and tells her, you know, like she makes us do it, or she made me do it. I just love that whole sequence.
One thing I also I get kind of unique to this film is the haunting stretches past that house.
Yes.
Because they see that Bathsheba sees the Warrens as such a threat. It takes a necklace and it uses that to threaten them. Basically tells her to leave, and Bathsheba pays the Warrens home a visit, pays their daughter a visit. Is that amazing? It's this shot where her daughter sees that Annabelle's out of her case and is just rocking her.
Something's rocking in the chair with Annabelle.
It adds like a scale that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting to take place over multiple locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really like.
It's a really well done sequence.
Like
it is really good.
You know, the actual exorcism. Like,
oh my god, it's intense.
It's really intense, and they threw a sheet over it. And I found out from the, and I'm not going to repeat everything from that podcast. I'd go and watch it, listen to it. It's really, really interesting. But then they threw a sheet over it. Mainly because they didn't want to be compared to The Exorcist. Like, every exorcism gets compared to The Exorcist. Like, they threw the sheet over her while she's tied to the chair to add a sense of mystery to it. Like, when you see like the blood come out, it's like, oh my god, what does it look like? What's going on under there? And it actually ended up adding to the scene. But also, when the chair goes up and upside down, it made the stunt work actually a bit easier. It made it a bit easier to tell that it's not Lily up there.
Lily, yeah, exactly. And Lily Taylor gives it her all in this possession scene. I mean, she's thrown around, like she's spewing up blood, and when the sheet eventually comes off and Bathsheba has sort of taken like full control, and the makeup on her is great. And the scene where, you know, she's going after April, there's a scene prior where she's, you know, inches away from stabbing Christine with some scissors.
The kids are not going to be all right after this.
Absolutely not. This is a chaotic scene. I mean, and again, you know, very different to how things actually played out in real life, but it's still really, really well done. And that's the thing, you know, we said at the beginning, The Conjuring ultimately doesn't really do anything different. Like, it is just a haunted house movie, it's a possession movie, but the way it's executed, the cast, I love the production design too, you know, set in 1971, I think.
James Wan house.
The James Wan house. It's like...
Bathsheba! By the power of God, I condemn you back to hell!
I love it all. Although I will say, and this is just like... I think I mentioned this in Insidious too, when we were talking about the second one anyway, where, the James Wan house, like, family have moved in, and they've put things up on the wall, and, you know, they've tried to make it homely, but it still looks like a very, like, your typical haunted house. Like, they've opted not to put wallpaper up, you know, it's just like it has that scary feel.
That money is tight. Because also, money's tight in this place, add a few repairs on there. To be fair, they didn't even realise there was a basement, which is usually a red flag anyway, because you boarded up.
Yeah.
Which, in my mind, it must have been boarded up by the last people that lived there, because the furnace is down there.
Yeah.
For the heating and the, you know.
Yeah.
That to me means if you're a family of 7 and only the father's working, and it seems to me the more easily reliant on individual jobs, like lorry jobs, I've got a feeling like they just didn't have the time or the resources.
Probably.
Over time, they probably would have decorated. But then, once Horton Star happened,
it's not your priority.
But I like this is a massive house, but 2 of the girls still have to share a room because very few houses can house.
Oh, yeah.
You need 6 bedrooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's loads of the movie that we've not talked about, but it's like, just go watch the movie. And the real life story around it is almost just as interesting as I'd say it's even more. It is more interesting than the film itself.
It is, you know,
and what it's managed to spawn. And obviously James Wan, he still like produces a lot of them, but he hasn't directed one since The Conjuring 2, because that's kind of what he does. He did a couple of Saws. He moved on.
Yeah.
He did the first 2 Insidious along with the first 2 Conjuring. He's moved on. He strikes me as a guy who he doesn't want to be pigeonholed into one particular franchise or genre. Because even obviously the genre of horror, but lots of different subgenres.
Yeah.
After a while, once he feels like he's done enough there, he likes to move on.
Yeah.
Because even like after these, he left horror entirely and did the Aquaman films. Returned to do a Giallo-inspired film.
Yeah.
But he's still very heavily involved in the Conjuring universe.
I think he must have a soft spot for your classic haunted house horror movie because, again, Insidious. I think there's a reason why when he started The Conjuring, he decided to go for the Perron story because it is basically a family beset by paranormal activity in a house. And again, Malignant, okay, it's not supernatural, but for the most part, it's set in a house, like around a family. So I think even though he does experiment with different things, he does have particular interests that, even subconsciously, he kind of maybe can't help but...
Is it the James Wan house?
...come back to the James Wan house. And yeah, when you think of the Conjuring universe, all the Annabelle movies, where we are with it now, it started with this one.
He kind of became Warner Brothers' golden goose after this.
Yeah.
I think all the films he's done since then have been under Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Because these are all massively successful. Aquaman, there's the first one, made them $1 billion. I think that's how he managed to wrangle doing Malignant. Oh, he did a Fast and Furious as well. I forgot, he did. I think it was Fast and Furious 7.
Yeah.
So he's, he always likes to try new things, and I can't wait till he fully returns with something. Whatever his next venture is.
Whatever it is, we'll always be fans of James Wan. I would also just say, like you said at the beginning that we are believers in the paranormal. I definitely am. I don't really know what that means, but I believe in something. Like, we've had our own unique experiences ourselves. And when I first watched this back in 2013, like, I'd never heard of Ed and Lorraine before. I'd never heard of the Perron family before.
I was the same. It kind of ignited an interest.
It did.
In me.
And for a really long time, I was not obsessed with them, but I was really intrigued by them, enough to get the book and like do my own research into them. And I think my feelings towards them, the real life Ed and Lorraine, have definitely changed over time. Like, now I've discovered a few things about them, and their credibility is heavily questioned. But I still enjoy this movie. And this is James Wan's very idealistic, very romanticized version of a real life couple, but that's fine. I'll always love this movie. I'll always return to it. Conjuring 2, I adore as well.
Yeah.
And what Patrick and Vera bring to it is
As they have done 4 movies so far, 3 Conjuring.
Yeah.
I've only seen the third one once. I think I enjoyed it, but not.
It wasn't what I expected it to be, and I feel like I've held that against Devil Made Me Do It for a while.
We need to give it a rewatch, but we know that they are coming back for a 4th and potentially final film.
Yeah.
But there is also a Conjuring TV series in the works, and I highly doubt that's going to include them, but I think that would be. Maybe it could be about a young... And we literally know nothing.
We don't know.
But we are getting another one. To be honest, it's only been announced, Conjuring the Last Rites. After Insidious Red Dawn, I want Patrick to direct it.
Yes. Big fans of director Patrick Wilson.
I don't know how much steam the Conjuring universe has left in it.
I don't know.
How much longer it can go on for.
Yeah.
But I enjoy these films, and obviously it all started here with this.
It started with this
very well-made haunted house movie.
Groundbreaking in its own right, but it doesn't do anything majorly different. It just does it well. And that's it at the end of the day. But it is a great film. As I say, I was obsessed with it when it first came out. I still love it all these years later. I class it as one of my favourite horror movies.
I think he's at this point, he was still desperately trying to separate himself from Saw.
Yeah.
To kind of prove he can make a movie that isn't full of blood.
I will say, I've always questioned the title.
The Conjuring.
The Conjuring. I don't necessarily think it fits. I've, obviously gotten used to it, but nothing is really conjured. It's already there. Yeah. In the house. They don't conjure up Bathsheba. She's always been in that farmhouse.
It's just a cool title, isn't it?
It's a cool title, but yeah. Having said, I don't know what else I would have called it. But I've always sort of questioned why they settled on this particular title.
And the house is still just known as the Conjuring House.
Yeah. One last little bit. Again, James Wan being a fanboy of old horror movies. That big yellow clunky text that we get at the beginning, like when the title comes up and we get a little bit of information about Ed and Lorraine as well. I adore that as well. Throwback to actual 70s horror movies.
Yeah. God, he must be an interesting person to have a beer with.
I think he'd be a really nice guy.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Really nice guy.
That probably means he's going to turn out to be a dickhead, isn't it? That's how Hollywood tends to go. You really like somebody and they end up being horrible people. Oh, God, I hope not.
Happy birthday to The Conjuring.
Yes, I think we actually missed its birthday by like
a few days.
A month or so, maybe.
Happy 10. It's 10 years old.
Yeah. And what a 10 years it's been. Like I said, this franchise is still going. It's worth a fortune. We get another installment coming out this year. With the writer's strike, who knows when the next one's coming out. It's fun. This is a really good movie, and if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yeah.
That is it, guys. And we will see you next week.